is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Typically, when we're talking injuries in the NFL in week number 5, it is a negative thing. But this time around, we get a couple of stars returning this week, potentially, in Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp. And the question is, how do we handle them? How do we handle guys like Puka Nacua in those situations where those stars are returning? Well, who better to ask about that than JJ Zachariason? JJ is with us here today to break down player props across week 5. Later on, Rob Friedman comes on to preview the pitching matchups in the Divisional Series. Then I'll wrap things up by talking NASCAR in Charlotte for what is a loaded sports weekend. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research. Joined here to start things off by JJ Zachariason. Check him out on Twitter at LateRoundQB. You can find his work at lateround.com and on the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast. JJ, week 5, kind of fun. How you doing today?
I'm good. Last night was a crazy game. I kind of thought that it could be, offensive driven, just given how poorly those defenses have played. I did not think that DJ Moore would be the only Chicago wide receiver to catch a pass and do what he did in that contest. So, if you had DJ Moore, good on you.
Yeah, I had to miss the first part of the game, and I pulled open my contest to see how things were going. I was like, that can't be right, because I think he had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns already. By the time I was checking, I was like, that's not correct. Yeah. But apparently it was. And the Commanders threw 51 consecutive plays, I believe, at one point too. So honestly, I know that game didn't set up as being super fun, but give me more of that. If you're going to be trash, be trash on defense at least.
Yeah, I mean, and Sam Howell is just so DGAF back there, and he's so aggressive, and it's fun. I mean, he's it's not unlike the Baker Mayfield in the way that Baker plays. It's a very similar style, and honestly, he's like a thicker Baker Mayfield, the way that he plays. So
it is weird because the aesthetic comp is also the play style comp in a lot of ways, which doesn't always mesh up, but here it definitely does. So hopefully we can get some more similar contests here in week number 5 on Sunday through Monday. We're going to break down and outline thoughts on player props, talk about Taylor and Kupp returning and how to handle that and much more. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Primetime Tom now expanding to 2 times per week. Tom will be with us, Tom Vecchio, breaking down the Sunday night football matchup between the 49ers and the Cowboys. That show will be posted on Saturday morning in your podcast feeds and over on FanDuel TV Plus. To get those, again, subscribe to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Check out FanDuel TV Plus by going to FanDuel.com/watch or downloading on your Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Roku device. It is free as long as you have a FanDuel account. And you can also check out the regular podcast on the FanDuel YouTube page. Let's talk now, JJ, about those returning stars in Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor, likely returning stars. And that's a tough situation because the guys filling in for them have played well. Zach Moss has been very good. Puka Nacua has been fantastic. So how do you go about projecting workloads for guys like Taylor and Kupp as they return from long-term injuries?
Yeah, a lot of it is guesswork and educated guesswork. It's not super easy. I usually am fairly cautious with the way that I project guys coming off of injury just in general. There are even things, Edwin Porras from Fantasy Points has tweeted about this last week about Jalen Waddle in particular coming off a concussion. There's a decline in player performance even coming off concussions that we've seen historically, according to him. But there's people like him, Jeff Mueller is out there who does a lot of great work with injury stuff. There are folks out there who can help you out in understanding what these workloads can look like. And then obviously look at the situations themselves individually to know, is it like a soft tissue injury? I'm more concerned about Cooper Kupp seeing a normal workload, not only this week, but just rest of season. He's older, than a Jonathan Taylor. You got a 30-year-old wide receiver who's had this really weird hamstring thing going on. Coming back to the field, probably doesn't see a full complement of snaps right away. And then you have to think longer term, what's this going to look like for the rest of the season, just given that individual profile. Whereas Jonathan Taylor, you can make the argument that what he has been doing with this ankle that's been giving him problems for evidently 10 months now, was more of a hold-in situation for Jonathan Taylor. And so you can at least make that argument. And so therefore, maybe he does see a decent workload, right away this week. And then just read what reporters are saying and read what their sort of guesstimate is for some of these players' workloads in an upcoming week and kind of go from there. So overall, I take a more conservative approach. I do think that obviously too, these players in particular entering their lineups, you have to look at the existing players on that team and see how they can sort of coexist and work together to understand what their projections might look like. Like Puka Nacua, everyone assuming that Nacua has been playing the Cooper Kupp role in this offense. It's not the case at all. Nacua has played on the perimeter on about 70% of his routes run, whereas Cooper Kupp's been, more in that like 30 to 40% range as a perimeter wide receiver over the last few years. So I think those guys can coexist, and therefore, the projection will reflect that. And maybe Nacua looks a little bit better than what other people might assume.
Yeah, Puka Nacua is Robert Woods. He's not Cooper Kupp. That he's playing that role, getting rush attempts, stuff like that. Like that's what he's been so far. And Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp coexisted for a long time, as long as Stafford was healthy. So I think that's totally fine for him. Other thing that I think is a huge edge for us now is that when players are coming back from IR, they're now on the injury report. We know that Cooper Kupp was limited on Wednesday. He was full Thursday, but we didn't know that before. If they were not on the active roster, they weren't showing up as being limited or full. And Jonathan Taylor was full on Wednesday. And I think that change in the injury reporting this year is really big for us in terms of having confidence in guys and kind of knowing what their projected workload may be coming back from these injuries. Those are two pretty fluid situations, the Colts backfield and the Rams pass catcher situation. But when you look at other spots across the league, JJ, which other situations that are up in the air might you be targeting when it comes to player props as those are posted later on?
Yeah, I think one situation right now that's really up in the air is the Broncos backfield. Javonte Williams has this hip injury that he suffered last week. He exited that game. Then we saw Julio McLaughlin get a lot of work as a result. And then Samaje Perine's obviously back there too, but Javonte Williams practiced yesterday. So the issue with this now is more than likely Williams will not have a typical workload for him. And so not only did McLaughlin, look good and maybe just play into a bigger role last week, but now we might be staring at a three-man running back by committee, and that's a huge problem for all three of those guys. Samaje Perine played 6 more snaps than McLaughlin last week, but again, it's not that hard to see, McLaughlin playing over Perine after his performance last week, and the team seems to like him a lot as a change of pace back. It's just one of those situations where I do think, if you see that the assumption out there is that it's a 2-man backfield, I think we're looking at more of a 3-man backfield, and then the unders are more intriguing as a result of that. So that's one situation. Another one would be Dalton Kincaid in particular. So the Bills this season, last year, a lot of people are like, why'd they draft Dalton Kincaid? Because he's not doing that much from a production standpoint so far this year. The Bills last season were last in the league in their rate of using 12 personnel, so 2 tight ends on the field at the same time. This year, they're second in the league. Kincaid is making a dramatic difference with how that offense is operating, and Josh Allen has been more efficient. He's had a better success rate. He's had a better EPA per dropback. So the team is performing better with Dalton Kincaid on the field. Whether or not the stats match or not for Kincaid in particular, that's a separate discussion. But Kincaid last week ran 7 more routes than Dawson Knox when they were tied the 2 weeks prior to that. And then week 1, Dawson Knox actually ran more routes than Dalton Kincaid. So if you see that these books are putting Kincaid at sort of his season-long median, you might want to up that a little bit and look at overs because he was used more in week 4. And then the last one, I'm going back to another backfield. I'm going to go to Breece Hall. Robert Saleh came out and said there's no more pitch count on Breece Hall, which is great because he's been by far the best running back in that backfield this season. There's no reason to trot out Dalvin Cook and even Michael Carter in that backfield. He saw his highest snap share last week at 44%. This week, he gets a great matchup against Denver. And this is, I believe, this is the team that he tore his ACL against last year.
It's so also Nathaniel Hackett revenge game.
That's right.
That's equally important. Yeah.
Yes, tons of storylines going on. With Sean Payton talking his junk. Against Nathaniel Hackett earlier this offseason. So just watch out for Breece Hall. I would be more inclined to lean over than under with a lot of his props this week.
Yeah, he's at 60.5 right now, so definitely a high number. But I think that it's a question of he can get 12 targets, 5 yards per carry. It depends on can he bust a long one once again. I think that's the question with Breece Hall. But I do think that they were trying to expand his workload, I think, in week 4, but because they were in 2-minute for a lot of the end of the first half, and then they didn't have the ball very much during the second half of that game, like it kind of masked that his workload was very good in the first half and just wound up being more Michael Carter focused than Breece Hall at that point. Let's dig into some yardage props now, JJ. When you look at the props available over at FanDuel Sportsbook, where are you seeing value for week number 5?
Yeah, so I have 2 unders for you today. George, because I'm boring. It's not fun to go with unders, but I do think that they're logical. The first one is George Kittle under 39.5 receiving yards. That's over on FanDuel. He did hit 95 yards against Dallas in the playoffs last year. So, there is some fear that this could be a terrible bet at the end of the day, but he's hit 40 receiving yards in just 4 of 13 games with Brock Purdy so far. He's only hit it once this year. That was against the Giants. The Giants ranked 31st in pressure rate to start the season. So it's a team that's not, generating pressure on their opposing quarterback. And so my fear, Dallas, who's number 1 in pressure rate, they're obviously getting to the quarterback a lot. My fear would be that they use George Kittle in a more blocking traditional tight end type role to sort of mitigate that risk. And so I think going under with Kittle at 39.5 makes plenty of sense given his production and given the fact that Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are both healthy and going to be active for this game too. And Brandon Ayuk obviously balling out. The other one I like is Miles Sanders under 40.5 rushing yards. This is over on DK. He's gotten 2 limited practices so far this week. He was banged up last week. Chuba Hubbard actually ended up seeing more snaps and more running back rushes than Miles Sanders last week. It's a tough matchup against Detroit, man. I mean, Detroit's allowed the second fewest rushing yards to running backs this season. Sanders actually hasn't gotten 25 rushing yards in each of his last 2. And this is a much tougher matchup than those last 2 games. So I wouldn't go the total yards route for Miles Sanders, I think, because he's been used in negative game scripts. He actually has a decent target share this season. But I do think that on the ground against this Detroit front and the fact that he's banged up, I do think that it makes a lot of sense if he's out there, if this prop is out there to bet the under.
And Detroit is a 10-point favorite for a reason. I actually laid the 9 earlier on this week. I think that's I think my number's at 11 or so. So it's deserved having this wide of a spread for this game. What about touchdown props? What you liking for week number 5 there, JJ?
Yeah, so I'll start with one. I mean, they're both kind of long shots, but I'll start with one that's less of a long shot. It's Zach Ertz. He's at plus 320 as an anytime touchdown scorer on FanDuel. Based on usage this year, he should have closer to 2 touchdowns, and he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. He leads all tight ends this season in target share, which is absolutely wild. And then he gets Cincinnati this week, and Cincinnati's been bad against tight ends this year. They've allowed a tight end touchdown in 3 of 4 games. They rank 10th in adjusted target share allowed to tight ends. So it's a team that's allowing targets to be funneled, even when adjusted for strength of opponent, being funneled to the tight end position. So I like Zach Ertz at these odds. Obviously, I wouldn't be betting this, if it was like plus 250 or something because it's Zach Ertz. But I like these odds at plus 320 as someone who has some positive touchdown regression coming his way. And then the other one, this is like, I shouldn't even be bringing this up on a show.
Love it.
But it's sort of that gut / the numbers are driving me this direction a little bit too. Jalen Hyatt, anytime touchdown plus 800 this week.
I love it.
So the Giants need a spark offensively. They're facing Miami this week. Miami's 4th in the league in air yards per attempt allowed. Jalen Hyatt's a deep threat, for this Giants team. There's a negative game script that we could see. So there's more passing as a result of that. Hyatt also, more importantly, this is where the numbers come into play. He ended up seeing 60% of New York snaps last week, which was a huge jump from the previous week. Only saw 2 targets, but that snap share doubled. So I'm going to go with Jalen Hyatt. If you want to play it a little bit safer, you could just go with Darren Waller and kind of play off of the narrative that they're going to get more involved this week than they did this past week. But I think the Jalen Hyatt bet's kind of fun because there was an increase in work this past week, and they need that spark. They need some sort of change within that offense because it's been pretty poor.
Yeah, Darren Waller plus 230 for anytime touchdown. Wan'Dale Robinson plus 550 also saw a pretty big increase in snaps this past week. But Jalen Hyatt, he looked good during the preseason when they actually let him play. They're going to have to throw quite a bit. That Miami defense is not one we need to fear all that much. Vic Fangio is a great coordinator, but like we can still definitely get some props against them. So Hyatt 8-1 is a fun one for sure. That is JJ Zachariason. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at Late Round QB. Find his work at lateround.com and check him out on the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast. JJ, thank you as always. We'll talk to you once again next week.
Thanks, Jim.
All righty. Again, follow JJ on Twitter at Late Round QB and the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, a great source for all of your fantasy football needs. Now, NFL is one thing going on this weekend. We've got WNBA, Formula One, NASCAR. But the thing I'm most excited about is MLB because the playoffs are here, which means we got to bring back on Rob Friedman at Pitching Ninja on Twitter. You can find his work on Peacock, MLB on Fox, and of course right here at FanDuel Sportsbook. And Rob, I get to talk to you for the first time in my entire life with the Twins having won a playoff series for the first time since I was in 5th grade. So I am in a very good mood. How you doing today?
I am doing great, and I'm glad you're in a good mood. That's good.
I've got this Wheaties box right here. This Wheaties box from 1987. These Wheaties are older than me, and I need to replace it. So I'm not going to ask you, can the Twins beat the Astros? That seems like it's, putting too much on you, but I'm pretty pumped, man. But for you, I feel like this has to be just the best time of year because we only got the 2 days of wildcard games, which is kind of a bummer. But you had games from 3:00 all the way up until 11, and now we get another 4-game slate on Saturday. You can't top this.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad to get a couple of days off too. God bless these teams for sweeping. It was still good baseball, even though they were short series. I mean, it was definitely fun, and excited to see what happens in the next round.
Absolutely. I am as well. And what we're going to do today is kind of talk about pitching staffs for the various teams because pitching is so paramount. That's the reason I can be excited as a Twins fan today is because that pitching staff was bananas and truly did do their job. And a lot of that was on the starters. But Rob, I think the thing that I want to focus more on is the bullpens because we see the importance of bullpen increase during the postseason. And when you watch these bullpens, which of them stand out to you as being potential X factors when we look at the divisional round matchups?
That's a really good question because it varies in the postseason. You'll always see somebody just jump up and outperform what they did during the regular season. I don't know that it's apples to apples comparing it. You also can use some starters in the bullpen too for longer term, long relief guys. So it's interesting because I don't see it as a huge advantage like I thought it did. As a matter of fact, a couple of bullpens I thought weren't that good in the regular season rose up in the postseason. So who the heck knows? I'm just guessing at this point, and I watch these guys all year.
Right. And that's the tough thing too, is I do my stuff based on numbers and the numbers lose a lot of value when things shift like this. The Twins, I can lean on them because I know them. I can look at their bullpen numbers, but and they're good, but Louis Varland comes out of nowhere and starts throwing heat. And it's that's not going to be accounted for in the numbers. And it's hard to lean on that, knowing that it's not going to fully represent what to expect in these playoff series.
Yeah, exactly. I think some guys, it's sometimes rising to the occasion. It's sometimes just, it's small sample size.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I've been surprised at some of the guys that have risen up. I thought Saalfrank had a tough outing against appearance for the D-backs. I'm you're putting a rookie in this situation. He got out of it too. I don't know how to use their bullpens. I know these guys know it, but it's not intuitive.
No, it's definitely not. It's a different kind of managerial style too, and that can be for better or for worse at times, for sure.
Pulling Barrios and stuff. Yeah.
What did
you think about that?
I love Yusei Kikuchi. And so I have a different perspective on it than a lot of people do. And I thought that I guess my move, Rob, would have been, I know that their thought process was you want Barrios in there because it gets the Twins lefties in there. You can get Kikuchi in there and shorten their bench. I understand the thought process there. I still feel like I would have wanted to start Kikuchi though. If I were planning to try to get the Twins righties out there, I think I would have wanted to just start him and see how he went. I honestly, I don't think there's a huge gap. Maybe that's wrong. But to me personally, with the way Kikuchi pitched throughout the summer, I don't think there's that huge of a gap. So I probably just started Kikuchi, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Kikuchi. He's one of my favorite dudes to watch. Love his stuff. I think there's a combination of eye test and analytics. Obviously, you're shorter, you're talking about a shorter series. You have to look at how a guy's actually performing. And I know, like, it's easy to second guess. I was actually first guessing the move when they made it. Like, I was like,
that's different.
Wait a second. Barrios is killing it.
You looked great.
Yeah. And he is capable of those games. It's not like he's, not. He can do that.
Right.
And I thought that was one of his games where he's pitching his butt off.
Right.
I would have liked to see him go a little longer, but I'm with you on Kikuchi. Like, I think Kikuchi has been underrated. People remembering past seasons.
Right.
And he's been really, really good. And he also seems to pitch emotionally, which I like in the postseason a lot of times. So,
and like, he pitched pretty well after that one inning. He must have gotten his full amount of sleep that night. He was good to go. But like, I think watching that game, I don't think you could have taken Barrios out there. It's like a move I like in theory, because like once he started warming up in the bullpen, like as a Twins fan, I was like, uh-oh. I thought that was a great move. But then you see Barrios, like, because that was in the third, he went down there, and like Barrios was still pitching well. And like, as he was still going, it's like, okay, now you need to pull the plug on this and like let Barrios cook until you see a changing of the tide, which we hadn't seen yet.
Yeah. And again, I think over the long run, statistics really matter. Over a short run in a game like this, it can be outweighed by actually how a guy is actually performing according to your eye test as a major league manager, pitching coach, whatever. So I think you have to balance them. And again, nobody would have second guessed him for leaving Barrios in for another batter. Like,
I also, the other thing I hate is that Kikuchi came in middle of the inning. Like, as a starter, he's been, I mean, I know he's relieved in the past. So like, that's not like totally jarring for him, but like, if you're going to bring him in, A, don't do it when Barrios is cooking, and B, don't do it with a guy on first, middle of the inning. Like, I think those are the two things that rub me the wrong way, despite loving Kikuchi.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And again, easy to second guess.
Right.
I think it's also easier to understand that you don't usually see this in any game.
Right.
And you're just skewing everything around. I would have left it.
And also the Blue Jays offense probably should have scored some more runs if we're being
right.
Like,
you're not going to win if you don't score. So that's we're arguing about all this stuff, but there were definitely other things.
Right. Now, the one thing that is easier to project forward is the starting pitchers. And in this divisional series, with the way the schedule sets up, you can probably see just 3 guys out there. Like the guy who goes in game 1 could probably go in game 4, and the guy in game 2 could probably go in game 5 if necessary. So we're looking at just the top end of each rotation. Which team do you think kind of gets a bump up? We're focusing on just those top end starters versus the full 5 and looking at depth.
I mean, the Phillies are tough to beat when you have, Nola performing like Nola and Wheeler performing like Wheeler. And if you do that, that's really good. Adding into, I think their bullpen is also really good. Like, to me, I even give them the edge over the Braves, which have some question marks. Especially in the starting pitching. I mean, Fried's got to come back for them to really be good. You can't just rely on Spencer Strider to dominate, because that starting pitching isn't that deep. Now, they can bludgeon you to death with their lineup. Like, that's something that I would not want to face. But the Phillies pitching is low-key nasty. I mean, Orion Kerkering, also, you add him to the bullpen.
Right.
Not a lot of people have seen him. I've watched him. I mean, I watched him since he was in college. He is freaking filthy and is an absolute X factor in this postseason, or has the potential to be in their bullpen. And then you add that with their normally filthy guys like Alvarado and Soto and Kimbrel. And then even some depth in pitching, like Sanchez, Christopher Sanchez was nasty during this regular season, especially with his changeup.
Absolutely. You can get him in more opportune matchups too, coming out of the bullpen. As opposed to facing a lot of righties, you can kind of use him more strategically. And potentially that would make him even more effective than what he was. Now, that series is the Phillies are plus 164 to win that series. And, the implied odds for that under 40%. So obviously sportsbooks are giving the Braves proper respect. Do you think the top end of that rotation makes this series competitive for all 5 games? Because I can't go out here and say like, oh yeah, fade the Braves, because like they're awesome for a reason. They're there for a reason. But like, do you think it's a competitive series as a result of the Phillies pitching?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it wouldn't shock me to see the Phillies win it. I think the Braves lineup is maybe constructed to give a lot of tough at bats, which maybe neutralizes some of that pitching. It's a lot easier to dominate a lineup that doesn't battle like they do and will hurt you when you make a mistake like they do. So that may outweigh the pitching. You know, I'm a pitching guy, but there's another side of the ball, and you know, the Braves hitting is insane. It's like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mentioned Sanchez as, you know, getting advantage as a lefty, but like I would not want to use any lefties against the Braves. Like, please, like I love Sanchez, but like maybe just take a couple days. You know, let's chill out for a bit because I do not want a lefty facing that lineup.
I don't want anybody facing
no,
that
that's
lineup.
True.
Like that, I've been saying that I wouldn't bet against the Braves. I learned my lesson early in the season.
Yep,
and then just stopped. Like I just can't predict it.
I don't blame you at all. Now, the fun thing about this year is we can see stars rise, you know, guys in new roles, could just be guys who maybe have underappreciated the entire year. But when you look at the divisional round, Rob, are there any breakout stars you've got an eye on as the games get underway?
Oh, Bobby Miller, if you haven't been paying attention to him, you should be. And they're going to need that. I think the Dodgers are short on pitching, but he's a potential stud. Grayson Rodriguez, potential stud. People haven't been paying. I mean, I've been paying attention to him. So I know these guys like household names, and they're household names in my household.
Right.
But I don't think in every household they are. And Grayson Rodriguez is flat out filthy. He is going to be there for a long time and is a stud. And there are other, I mean, like I think there's any number of pitchers that could surprise you, you know, and that have surprised. Like I think there are guys that just rose up in the wild card round. So I have no idea. Like it's rolling the dice on this stuff. I do like Kirkring as an X factor for people to pay attention to too, just because how filthy he is.
I want to go back to Rodriguez because that series is tough. They're facing off with the Rangers, and the Rangers,
very tough.
I know it was aided by a lot of mistakes by the Rays, but the Rangers, like, I don't want that to downplay what the Rangers did. They objectively played very well in that series, and they've got some stars. So it's a pretty even series over at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Orioles are at -122. Do you think that number undersells? Like, are we failing to appreciate how good the Orioles were by putting them at -122?
They make me a little nervous because of the lack of Bautista.
Okay.
Their bullpen was ridiculous when you had that anchor there. Yeah. Now it turns into a little bit of a crapshoot. I mean, I like Cano, obviously, and I didn't like the Rangers bullpen, and they rose up. And plus they can shorten it because Nate Eovaldi looked like Nate Eovaldi. Like if he looked like a big game pitcher, and if he keeps doing that, you know, that'll be a really rough series. But then again, you have Kyle Bradish, who may be the most underrated pitcher in baseball. I don't think people realize how good that guy is too. Yeah. So the starting pitching for the Orioles, you know, they have very dynamic pitching, and they're a fun team to watch when those guys are on.
And they definitely are. And I think the Eovaldi thing, that's another component to consider when trying to handicap these series, is that like he was struggling during August and September coming off of his injury. Like he wasn't sharp. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, I'm Nathan Eovaldi again. I'm going to shove against a very good lineup. And it's like, how am I supposed to predict that? Like, how do I handicap for that?
I totally agree. I mean, you looked at Nola, who was uneven, then pitched great. And I expect more. Like, that's what I expect out of Nola. Nola's great. I didn't know what to expect out of a guy like Ginkel for the D-backs who pitched fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I was
fired up. He was fun to watch just because like the emotion was great.
Right. And these are guys that you just like, you can handicap all day, and then somebody does that and you keep going to them. Right. I'm like Matzik for the Braves when the Braves won it. Like all of a sudden the guy ends up with, you know, for Matzik was the big ball theory. Like he was just out there, you know, carrying him out to the mound. And you get guys like that just rise up. So that's what makes this fun, but also makes it really tough to handicap. Like, you know, you don't know when guys are going to get pulled. K props are really interesting because you got great pitchers, but how long are they going to go?
Right.
You don't know.
And that was a tough thing too. I had Peralta over 5.5 in that, because I was like, okay, they used him, like, you know, no Airbender in the bullpen, waiting back there. I was like, okay, cool. Like, we'll get him to go long. Kind of struggles a bit. That stupid Arizona lineup, Rob, again, like I feel like they've bitten us so many times this year.
I was so sure that was going to happen until it didn't. Like he had picked up 5K. It was really quick.
I think the third inning he was at 5.
Yeah, don't have to worry about that. Let me worry about Gallon some, because also I had a same game parlay on that. And, you know, Gallon did fantastic. Like, for not having good stuff, I didn't think he was anywhere close to his best game.
Right.
And he just battled and then stayed in the game. And I thought, who would have thought that Peralta would leave before he would?
Right. I did not. I had the Brewers money line in that game, so I did not think that would happen. But that's why they play the games. And it was a fun series. I'm looking forward to the divisional rounds on Saturday. I think it's going to be a blast.
Oh, it definitely will.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is Rob Friedman. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at Pitching Ninja. Find his work at Fox, Peacock, MLB on Fox, and of course, right here at FanDuel Sportsbook as well. Rob, enjoy. Just have a blast. Hopefully, you've gotten rested up the past couple of days, but enjoy the action tomorrow and throughout the rest of next week, too.
I am so ready to go.
Me too. This is going to be a blast. Again, check out Rob on Twitter at Pitching Ninja. I'm just so excited for this series. I know it's not just because the Twins are there, but also like playoff baseball is so fun. So it's going to be a really good time watching all the baseball unfold. We're going to finish things up by talking about NASCAR here in just 1 second. But first, snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That is $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, totals, and more. So visit FanDuel.com and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipts. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's finish things up here by talking about NASCAR for today, because the NASCAR Cup Series and the Xfinity Series both in Charlotte at the ROVAL, and it is the cutoff race for both of those series. And what that means is we're probably going to see some cars point racing here. And that's an important note for this race because stage breaks are back on road courses. NASCAR had gotten rid of those for the first couple road courses this year, but they are back here. So teams racing for points around the cut line in the playoffs will stay out at the end of a stage in order to get stage points. Others will pit because you can do that without losing a lap in these races. Those drivers who pit will have a leg up for stage 2 and stage 3. So we do want to downgrade drivers who are going to race for points in this race. But I don't think I can downgrade Christopher Bell enough not to like him, even as he's now down to 16-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Bell was 18-1 earlier on this week, now 16-1. And that pushes his implied odds to 5.9%, but I've still got him at 8.2%. And again, you want to account for the fact that the playoffs are here, so you do want to downgrade him a bit, but I still feel like I want to go here. He is not locked into the next round, but Bell's in a pretty good spot. He is 22 points above the cut line, so he's in a better position than guys like Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, who are going to be competitors in this race. So I think that's at least a positive. So Bell, I think, is in an okay points position, not the best, but not the worst either. And he's also been fantastic on road courses. He, of course, won at Daytona in his second year in the Cup Series. He had arguably the fastest car in Chicago at the street course this year. He finished third in Watkins Glen, and he had a top 9 average running position in 3 other races. Plus, Bell won this race last year. It was aided by strategy, but he can clearly get the job done. Toyota was awful on road courses last year, but Bell still got the job done here because he is a very good road racer. So I do think you need to ding Bell because he'll race for points, but even with that, I'm willing to take a swipe at Christopher Bell, 16-1 to win for this week. Other bet I like in the Cup Series right now is Austin Dillon to finish inside the top 10. That is plus 340 at FanDuel Sportsbook, and that's long enough for me to actually buy into Dillon for this race. The implied odds at plus 340 for Dillon are 23%. I have him at 28%, and he's up there despite the fact he has finished outside the top 30, I believe, in 3 consecutive road course races, or he's been outside the top 30 for 3 of them, at least this year. And Dillon, I think, is a better road racer than that. I think that he's undersold a bit by those finishes. He's run well at this track. He had a 9th place average running position here back in 2021. He finished 10th here last year, and he's also had decent speed this year, despite the poor finishes. He was running inside the top 5 in Chicago when he wrecked. It was his fault. That was based on strategy, but he was sticking inside the top 10 before the crash occurred. He had a good race in Watkins Glen, but then had an ill-timed pit stop or ill-timed caution that kind of cost him there. So I think he's better than this number implies. Plus 340, pretty long odds for a guy to finish inside the top 10, especially because he will not have to points race here. So Dillon, plus 340 for a top 10, I think advantageous enough for us to take a swipe at him there. As far as the Xfinity Series side goes, there are 3 outrights I like entering this week. And that's after considering playoff implications, considering all that stuff. These are the 3 ones I like the most. Those are Austin Hill 10-1, Jordan Taylor at 13-1, and Brett Moffitt at 80-1. Hill is the one guy in the playoffs here. He's not locked in yet, but he is 44 points above the cut line. And the stages break down differently in the Xfinity Series because it's a shorter race. So I don't think it's as big of a detriment to race for points here as it will be in the Cup Series. But Hill is a good road racer. He has 7 top 5s in 13 career road course races in Xfinity. And a lot of those have come in tougher fields than we have in this one. Like there's no AJ Allmendinger, there's no Ty Gibbs, no Austin Cindric, no Noah Gragson. So it is a reduced field from what we typically get. So I have Hill at 10.8% to win this race. His implied odds are 9.1%. I think I'm willing to take that. Even though there is a risk of points racing, I don't think that matters as much here as it would on the Cup Series side of things. Taylor is not in the playoffs, nor is his team, so he can take the more optimal approach when it comes to running this race. And I was talking before about how there's no Allmendinger, no Gibbs, et cetera, et cetera. Jordan Taylor is likely the best road course racer in the entire field. He is a 3-time IMSA champion, and that speed is translated to the Cup Series, to NASCAR in Taylor's first 2 starts. He qualified near the front at Circuit of the Americas, filling in for Chase Elliott. Now, the Cup Series car is more similar to the cars that Taylor drives at IMSA than what we have in the Xfinity Series, but he also ran Portland in the Xfinity Series with Colleague Racing, the team he'll race for this weekend. 8th place average running position in that race. So I do think his skills will translate to this field. That Portland race was also a diminished field because it was an opposite Cup Series, opposite weekend from the Cup Series. So we don't have to make the field adjustment there, but I do think he's pretty enticing, especially knowing he can kind of run his optimal strategy. He's getting good equipment. He's a very talented road course racer. So I have Taylor at 8.8% to win. His implied odds are 7.1%. I think we should be high on Taylor in this race, given what we've seen from him in those first 2 races and given his background and given the fact there's not the best level of competition for this race. Finally, Brett Moffitt is 80-1, and long shots are long shots for a reason. It means that the odds this bet hits are quite low, but I think they're higher than the implied odds. I have Moffitt at 3.4% to win. That might be too high, but his implied odds are 1.2%. So even if I am too high on Moffitt, I think the sports books are a bit too low. Moffitt is a good road course racer. He won at Bowmanville in the Truck Series back in 2019. A couple of the podiums for Moffitt in the Truck Series on road course races, and he was 4th in Chicago this year. A shortened race, but he was running well before the red flag came out. He also finished 7th at COTA last year. No points concerns for Brett Moffitt because this team is not in the playoffs, and they did just announce earlier on this week that Haley Deegan will be joining AM Racing in the Xfinity Series next year, and Moffitt does not have a contract with them yet. They want him back, but he doesn't have the sponsorship. So he has motivation to run really well here, trying to earn a sponsor for next year so he can keep his ride with AM Racing or get a ride elsewhere. So I feel like things line up pretty well for Moffitt. Again, please keep in mind that long shots are long shots for a reason. He is 80-1 for a reason, and even if my model is correct on Moffitt, the odds this bet loses are 96.6%. But again, we're just betting against the market, and my numbers are higher than the market here, and I agree with what they're saying. So I think Moffitt 80-1 is a pretty fun option in the Xfinity Series for Saturday's race. So Xfinity Series, I like Moffitt 80-1, Taylor at 13-1, and Hill at 10-1. Cup Series, Austin Dillon top 10 at plus 340, and Christopher Bell 16-1 to win the race. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. I want to give a big thank you once again to JJ Zachariason and Rob Friedman for swinging by, breaking down NFL and MLB. Find JJ on Twitter at Late Round QB, and find Rob at Pitching Ninja. Reminder that tomorrow, Primetime Tom is back. Tom Vecchio breaking down a Sunday Night Football between the 49ers and the Cowboys. You can get that right here in the Covering the Spread podcast feed and over on FanDuel TV+. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow FanDuel Research at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in forward today. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you once again Monday. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.